because you can certainly go out there and raise capital the wrong way and get yourself in trouble with the SEC, but you can do it the right way and raise hundreds of millions of dollars, as Dugan has helped people do. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Cash Flow Digest. My name is Matt Faircloth. Our company is called the DeRosa Group, and we are a real estate company dedicated to transforming lives through real estate. We make money while we make a difference. What? That's right. And we are going to be talking about all kinds of things, making a difference wise in today's show. I've got a guest I really look up to. I've learned a lot from. He's a really, really great dude. So looking forward to our guest conversation today. You guys want to stay kosher with the SEC and want to do lots of raising capital, as I talk about in my book, but do it the right way. Stay tuned for our guest. This show is broadcast on Spotify with a video as well. So if you guys are watching on Spotify, you can also watch it on Spotify. How cool is that? This program is broadcast live on DeRosa Insiders, which is a Facebook page. All you got to do is just go to Facebook. It's free. Go to Facebook and join DeRosa Insiders. Thousands of people that are members of the DeRosa Insiders community. Join it. Introduce yourself. Say hi to everybody. This guest is somebody who I've shared a lot of laughs with. We've done a lot of business with. And I've learned a lot from, and a lot of people that I look up to look to this person in high regard for mentorship and for support and for legal counsel as well. It's always great to have a good lawyer in your corner. You need to have that if you're a rising business owner. Dugan is great for attorney stuff, but he's also phenomenal at understanding the equity world and what it takes to go do what I talk about in raising private capital, but to do it the right way. Because you can certainly go out there and raise capital the wrong way and get yourself in trouble with the SEC, but you can do it the right way and raise hundreds of millions of dollars, as Dugan has helped people do. And I'm super excited for today's conversation with our guest, Dugan Kelley. Dugan, how are you today, brother?
Hey, buddy. Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Man. You too. I love that lion behind you, man. That's like your spirit animal, isn't it?
That is it, man. That's the ethos of my life right there. Everyone wants to eat. Very few people are willing to hunt. So
yeah, Dugan's willing to do it. Dugan's kind of like the lion a little bit. He kind of smiles not that much, right? Like where we at? Yeah, but Dugan is phenomenal, and I respect him like I would respect a lion. He's definitely the king of the jungle. So Dugan, you can do a quick intro about yourself, and we'll hop into a combo.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a full-time securities and real estate counsel. So we structure deals for sponsors, operators, syndicators. I use those terms interchangeably with one another. So whenever you're trying to buy an asset, anything to do with dirt, we'll help you structure that. And if you're trying to raise income to back into that down payment, to get the loan, to get the keys to whatever asset that you're buying, we assist you with trying to do that compliantly and legally. So you can raise money from passive investors to do that in a legal way and a compliant way. And so we do that for our clients. Last year, we structured over $5 billion in deals for sponsors, operators, syndicators. This year, we're closing in on around $3 billion. So given the volatility in the capital markets, yes, people are still buying. Yes, there are still deals out there. Yes, you have to have a thorough understanding of underwriting. You need to be listening to people, thought leaders in the space like Matt and others to keep abreast of exactly what's going on. So that's
times are changing, aren't they? And people think that, it's been like multifamily's been this for the last 10 years and now it's changing. No, things change every day, right? This Fannie Mae thing is a change that's happening now. It's going to change the small multifamily space. And there's going to be something else that's going to happen in November and in December and in January that's going to continue to change the world. What are you seeing in changes in the multifamily world versus where things were a year and a half, 2 years ago? Or what are you seeing from your clients? What are you hearing on the street about the state of the market today?
Yeah, so there's no doubt, right? We can't pretend that things haven't changed. They definitely have changed. But just like the market and cap rates, so we've seen cap rate compression. So where people were buying properties on a 2 cap rate, now those properties are trading potentially at a 5, a 6, a 7 cap rate. That just means that prices, the purchase price for properties is going down, which creates more pressure on existing investors that are already in those properties. So they're having to look at alternatives if they want to salvage their capital. So you can't buy a property at here and put in equity, and then the value of the property is now here. Well, the people that were caught in the middle are obviously investors. So that forces a lot of sponsors, operators to either do cash in refinances. That means they're going to refinance with the future lender, and they're going to provide additional equity to get that new loan, to put it maybe from a floating rate loan into a fixed rate loan, or they have to go woo a recapitalization individual or group. That means a new whale or potential whale enters your ecosystem and provides that cash, that liquidity to be able to ride out the market volatility. All of that is happening. And the Fed is not putting its head under the sand either. They came out, both the FDIC, the Fed, and the National Credit Union Administration came out with joint guidance in June of this year. So that a lot of people still don't even know about. And they told banks, community banks, agency banks, obviously, when we're talking about agency, we're talking about HUD, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, to work efficiently and prudently to restructure loans right now, not wait until the house is on fire, restructure the loans now. So we're doing a lot of restructuring and loan modification for borrowers with both bridge lenders, meaning short-term lenders, that's the bridge component, and agency lenders to help restructure those loans from everything from what we call the debt service coverage ratio, being able to waive certain violations potentially of your loan documents right now, to rolling loans into a fixed rate, to releasing reserves, to giving extensions on maturity dates, to giving maybe a longer amortization table. There's lots of ways in which the Fed and national regulators have encouraged lenders to look at prudently and effectively negotiating with otherwise creditworthy borrowers, restructuring their current loans. But that's the state. That's the state of the industry. So the people that are winning, and there are still people winning deals, closing deals, refinancing deals, selling deals, are people that are able to pivot and make decisions quickly. You cannot sit around. Like Matt said, you got to make a decision. You got to get off your duff and actually do something. Don't be paralyzed by fear or indecision.
You're seeing the encouragement for workout already happening.
Totally. I've got major servicers for the agencies and their major bridge lenders are already doing this, but they're also not desperate. So if people think that this is 2008, I started practicing in the late 90s. So I was in the dot-com bust. That was where some of this gray hair started. And then 2008, that's where other gray hair, and Matt has more gray hair than
mine too. Yeah.
Now we're seeing another cycle, and people need to woosah, breathe, just breathe, relax. This is not 2008. So I think a lot of this is self-fulfilling prophecies by people if they're afraid and they need to do things. Now, I'm not saying don't act. If you've got a deal that's in distress, you need to identify the distress, fix it, plug the hole right now. Don't wait around until your property gets foreclosed upon, and you need to be transparent with your investors.
They will. If you don't talk to your lender and you're not transparent, you leave them no option if you don't have a conversation. I mean, I've heard of folks getting in a pinch with their lenders by not communicating. And I've also heard of folks already starting to toss the keys back to the lender, meaning like say, hey guys, I'm out. And those are, of course, the nuclear option that you could have. But what I believe I'm hearing you say, Dugan, is that you don't have to do those two things. You don't have to say, here, lender, here's the keys. That's it. I'm out. Right. And you also don't have to just kind of like just sit in the corner and hope and pray that things will come around and the market will all of a sudden magically come back up. There's something in the middle, which is maybe eating a little bit of crow, maybe not hitting the investor return numbers that you are, but maybe also being able to live another day in these deals. Correct?
Totally. Totally. That I couldn't have said it better myself, Matt. So the reality is, if you have a deal, those of you that are listening to this, watching this, and you're in potential distress, talking to the lender and having a definitive plan of what you want to do and what you're trying to modify inside your loan, that's crucial. Your leverage to get the lender to listen to you is to say, if you're not able and not willing to restructure or modify the loan, at some point, the money tree dies. At some point, there is not an inexhaustible amount of capital that the GPs or your investors or whatever are going to be willing to put into the deal, because that's good money after bad. So you're negotiating with your lender in a more transparent way to basically say, listen, we think this is fair for you. It's fair for us. It gives us the time to ride the volatility out in the capital markets and also stabilize the property, potentially to be able to salvage investor capital. But if you're not willing to negotiate and you're not willing, then you can't be afraid of that process of here's the keys. It just didn't work out because of the market conditions. But I'm a big believer in tackling the problem head on, not ignoring it. We're not
engaging in a conversation.
Have to.
Are you seeing any flexibility on this rate cap mess that's been going on? We've had the situation too where rate caps we paid fractions for, like rounding error money for, are now selling for 6 figures, maybe even 7 figures. Lenders were allowing people to get into deals with a rate cap that only went 2 years on a 3-year loan, which kind of seems like a weapon of mass destruction. But back in the day, when a rate cap only cost 10, 15, 20K, Who
Right.
cares? No big deal, right? Just buy
Right.
another one down the road. But then all of a sudden, rates go through the roof. And that
Right.
rate cap becomes a real asset. It becomes worth a lot of money. Are you seeing flexibility from these bridge lenders on requirements for rate caps? Because those that I hear that are in trouble, and the head scratching we've had to do at DeRosa has pretty much been around the rate cap.
That's a great question. So I'm seeing lenders be willing to do a couple of things. One is if you can demonstrate to the lender that you're willing to buy a rate cap or a modified rate cap, but instead of buying it, instead of giving that money basically to an insurance company, which we call a hedge, there's a broker involved, and then there are banks. Those banks are essentially acting as insurance companies to be able for rate caps in connection with floating rates. Think about escrowing that money as additional reserves with the lender. And lenders are for the whole rate cap debacle and mess in connection with the floating rate market system is really meant to be a safety net to you to do debt service. So if you don't have that theoretically in place, and lenders are more willing to allow some flexibility because they understand the price of rate caps are so out of proportion to where they have historically been. Matt is absolutely correct. Years ago, we were buying rate caps for pennies on the dollar,
Yeah.
and they were worthless. Now, if you have a property that theoretically is in distress and your lender's allowing you to move into a fixed rate, or you're able to theoretically refinance an existing floating debt rate loan into a fixed rate loan, that rate cap is an asset
You can
of
sell
the
it.
company that you can sell it, and it'll
We've
be
sold
worth
it.
potentially
We made a lot of money selling rate caps, which we didn't even look at it on our balance sheet. We didn't even think it was a thing. And we were like, oh, wait a minute. We just refinanced this property. We had a year left on the rate cap. And we called our rate cap guy. We used derivative logic. We called up him and he's like, oh yeah, that's worth this. And you paid
right.
this for it. I'm like, oh, okay, let's liquidate that. I want to change up a little bit because there are a lot of folks that are watching this program now that have gotten into raising capital for deals that they have. And something that you've taught me a lot about is the right way to raise equity for your deals, right? What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make around raising equity from investors?
Yeah, so not understanding that it isn't the Wild West and that they're actually the Securities and
There's
Exchange
these things
Commission
called rules.
does care. They really do care when you're raising capital. A lot of people don't understand the three principal foundations for the Securities and Exchange Commission, our friends in Washington. Reality is they're protecting investors. So the rules are not there to hinder or prevent you. They're there to protect investors. They're also there for corporate governance. They have to govern, they have jurisdiction over 27,000 plus individuals, entities, registered broker dealers, registered investment advisors, public exchanges, private exchanges, alternative trading systems, crypto, all of this stuff they have corporate governance over. But three, most importantly, that people don't think about, and that is sponsoring capital formation. The Securities and Exchange Commission wants you to be successful. They want you to do deals. They want you to raise capital because that's the lifeblood of the American economy.
Of course,
That's
capitalism 101.
And then secondarily, I would say not engaging in what we call transactional based compensation. So a big issue that a lot of people don't understand, and that is unlike maybe your day job, your W-2, if you're a sales guy, the more you sell, the more you make. That's a commission. That's
Right?
the American way, right?
Yeah.
We totally get that. In the securities world, that's not how things happen. You can't tie promotion or more capital or higher wages or compensation to the sale of securities unless they are a registered broker dealer. So those two big components, I think people need to just grasp and understand.
So in saying it in layman's terms, right? That's like me meeting somebody off the street and saying, hey, I'm buying that apartment building over there and I need to raise 10 million bucks in equity. I can't raise it all, but I heard a rumor that you know some very, very well-to-do people and you could help me raise some money. So for every dollar you raise, I'm going to pay you 10 cents in a commission for raising the equity for my apartment building deal, right? Me striking that deal, I just broke the rules according to the SEC, correct?
Don't do it. Exactly.
Right, don't do that. Right.
Somebody wants to introduce you to the people. They have an abundance mentality and they're not looking for any particular compensation. That's fantastic.
Yep.
One of the reasons why Matt and I love this industry as much as we do is because it's really big, but it's really small. And the people that are actively in this, they really want to help other people, even if those other people are potentially their competitors. There is a natural desire and inclination, a family atmosphere that often exists in this type of investing environment to help people.
Rising tide raises all boats, right? What if, and I'm asking selfishly, right? What if DeRosa Group, my company, decided to hire a in-house salesperson, right? What if I hire a W-2'd salaried person whose job is some, inbound equity shows up saying, hey, I love what DeRosa Group's doing and I'd love to invest with you guys. And they get that person to commit 100K into our next deal. Am I allowed to pay that person since they're a staff member, like a employee of the DeRosa Group?
Yes, totally.
Okay.
The issuer of the securities is the entity that owns the asset that people are investing into. But there are associated persons of the issuer, people that have roles within the organization that you're paying, and the payment and the compensation is not tied to the sale of securities, but their job might actually be to help sell the securities of the company that's actually buying the apartment building or the mobile home or whatever.
But they have to have other things they're doing. They can't be just somebody I met at a networking event and their only function in the partnership they have with me is raising equity, right?
Yeah.
That is selling equity on without a license. Maybe if they're also doing asset management and they're also doing other functions in the business on an ongoing basis well after closing, then they're part of the issuer, correct?
And they can be a W-2 employee. So if you have a sales team in there that's handling investor calls, potential investor calls, existing investor calls, all of that. And part of their job function is to talk about in your existing network of retail investors, here's a deal that we have coming up that I think might fit your portfolio. That's fine. There's no issues with that. Think about the public policy behind what the Securities and Exchange Commission is basically saying. They're basically saying, if you're being paid a commission to sell securities, the likelihood is that you're not going to be willing to tell all of the risks associated with the transaction. So the Securities and Exchange Commission says, hey, we want to favor, remember, investor protectionism. We want to favor protecting investors over this idea that you're going to be able to earn a commission on the more that you sell. So that's the policy behind it. And it's a good policy. You can understand the reasoning behind it.
I get it.
They're not meant to be like the hall cop sitting there to pass out demerits or fines.
These are things to protect investors, and I get it. And I could see how without that regulation in place, you could have people being willing to paint only the sunshine and roses of the investment opportunity because they're not exposed to either side of it. And the only thing that they get is a commission check if the deal does well. And they're not a part of it. They're not employed by the issuer. They're their own entity. So they're really not, it's not a win-win, is it? There are ways to do things the right way. What you need is good legal counsel that's able to give you that navigation map that say, okay, I get you want to climb that mountain over there and you got to go around that mountain pass and go here, go here. Don't just drive willy-nilly up the mountain and figure it out as you go. There are rules that are set in place to protect people that you might inadvertently break without a good legal counsel showing you the right way to navigate your path to get to the mountaintop. So something I get a lot, I talk about it in my book, and I have my own theories on it. I want to hear what you have to say about this, is the concept of equity versus a joint venture, right? And a lot of my students will say, hey, I don't want to raise equity. I'm just going to do a JV. And I'm like, well, time out. Let's talk about that. I want to bring in like 20, 30 investors, and they're all going to be my JV partners on this deal. Hey, man, unless each of those JV partners all have a real recordable job in the deal, and you could show me how they're all active, you probably just sold a security without realizing it. So what is your perspective and the legal thoughts around JVs versus selling passive equity? Yeah.
So unless your deal is really small and you've got some buddies, so let's just listen, we're all going to go out and buy a donut shop. We think there's donut growths, right? Certainly if you look at my posterior, I've eaten my fair share of donuts in the past, present, and future. The reality is if you're going to go buy a donut shop, you got 4 guys that are going to come in, your 4 buddies or gals, and they're going to put in their own capital contribution into that. And they're going to share in the upside and the downside. And they're not looking for a specific return, and they're not treating it as a passive investment. Fine. That's a joint venture. No issues. Or that partnership between those entities or those individuals can be construed as a joint venture. Yeah. But you cannot skirt U.S. securities laws, and each state has its own state securities board. Yeah. So a lot of people think, well, it's just it's all our friends in Washington and they don't care. Well, 1, they do care. And 2, it's not just your friends in Washington. It's your friends in the state in which you're actually raising money from investors. They have their own state securities board. So I would say, what are you saving? You're saving what? The cost of the PPM? What is exactly the motivation as to poise to say this is not the sale of securities? If you've been following current events, understand that there was these large group of people out there in what we call crypto, right? Yeah. They were taking the position, this is not the sale of security. And they were engaging in all sorts of stuff in Congress, and you're seeing the SEC crack down. And now there's enforcement actions, which means formal lawsuits.
It's a token, Dugan. It's not a dollar, is it? Right? No.
Right.
Yeah, that's the biggest. You didn't say Simon Says game I've ever heard ever, man. Where it was like hey, I'm going to go buy a real hard asset over here.
Yes.
And you're going to give me real American currency, dollars, in exchange for this phantom thing called a token. I'm going to take this token and I'm going to call that equity for this thing over here, right?
Right.
That's the biggest load. I heard
No.
people talking about that as a ways to skirt the SEC. And not for nothing. I mean, attorneys are not free. They do cost money, but they do earn it, and it's really worth every penny you pay. So people that are trying to come up with ideas to skirt paying attorney's fees, which is typically why people want to get cute with this JV stuff and everything like that, is to skirt paying an attorney literally a couple of grand to keep you out of trouble. He finds Dugan, I'd be willing to bet you are a lot more than what your fee would be, right?
Not only that, the fines, but you're going to potentially have to disgorge all the profit that you made on that joint venture. You're potentially going to have to issue what we call rescission, meaning you're going to have to give back the investors.
Yep.
So imagine if you used equity, you successfully closed on an apartment building through a joint venture from 20 investors. You didn't register it. You didn't register any exemptions with the Securities and Exchange Commission. You didn't sell it through a private placement memorandum, which covers your backside and the investor's backside. And now the investors are going to lose their money, or potentially the asset is going to have to be sold early, and you're going to bear the brunt of those breakage fees. They might even say, listen, you're going to sign this agreement that says you can't do any future deals. So now the decision to save a little bit of money on paying an attorney has now morphed or mushroomed into like a thermonuclear wasteland.
Right. Well, pretty much like writing a big check and also having to get out of the industry altogether. No fun for anybody. You might as well just pay an attorney a fraction of what that big check would be and stay in the industry, make a living out of this thing. JVs do have their place, guys, but as Dugan said, it is typically for a way smaller deal. And I've always seen them, and we've done them, but only with one other investor. And with that investor had a clear, documented role in the project where it was not just a passive investment. They were involved. A venture is joint, right? I'm doing something, you're doing something, right? They have effort towards the success of the project. It's not all based on my effort.
There's a lot of syndicators out there that have joint ventures in place with a preferred equity potential investor. But that's an arm's length transaction, meaning the preferred equity is typically a debt fund or a bank or another lender that's going to come in and provide mezzanine or secondary debt financing, or they might take their financing as an equity investment in a joint venture, an entity that the syndication also owns in connection with that pref equity investor. That's totally fine too. So I don't want people to think that you can't do joint ventures. I'm just saying, if the meat and potatoes is you're wanting to raise money from your Rolodex of individuals, and you want to structure it as a joint venture to avoid the things that are only going to help you as the sponsor, which means telling all the investors of all the risks, the downside, the ways in which their money would be lost. Imagine that. You're cutting yourself off of theoretically the ability to protect yourself. So lots of ways to do it right in a good way. And there's plenty of ways to do it wrong. You just want to make sure that you're not on the wrong side.
I want to transition to something interesting. This is like a big idea. And you're like one of the most creative attorneys I've met. So a long-term vision I have at for my company, the DeRosa Group, is in transforming lives through real estate, is that, let's say I go and buy an apartment building, right? A 100-unit apartment building, just for round numbers, right? Or anybody here who's watching does this as well. No reason why a model can't be developed for those that live in that apartment building to pay me $1,000 a month in rent, and then however much they want to pay on top, as I would my home mortgage. My home mortgage, I pay my obligations to the bank, and my obligation to the bank is to pay them interest and whatever escrow I have for other obligations that they have to keep their lien intact, such as hazard insurance and real estate taxes, right? Other money I want to pay my bank on top of my home mortgage to buy myself future equity in my home, like paying my principal down. If my payment's $1,000 a month to my bank for all those baseline obligations, and I choose I want to pay my bank another $500 a month to pay my principal down over time, I'm actually buying myself equity in my home by buying my bank out and getting them out of here, right? Yeah. I can do that as a home owner with a bank. There's got to be a model that could be developed that a tenant could do the same thing. That a tenant that lives in a 2-bedroom 1-bath apartment that pays me $1,000 a month in baseline obligations for her or his overhead for rent for the property. Why can't a model be developed that for an extra $200, $300 a month for that tenant to buy a small little piece of the property they live in? Now, maybe that money they pay goes back as a return of capital back to investors over time. And I mean, even after like a year, that tenant would have $3,000, $4,000 in equity in the property. But do the math, Dugan. What if she lives there for 10 years, right? Then she's got at principal purchase 40 grand worth of equity in the apartment building, plus whatever upside she gets on top of that, right? And you can play the game further about like, what if you refinance, return capital? What if you pay her distributions in cash flow or buy her more shares of the property? I mean, dude, you could have a tenant renting a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, paying $1,000 a month that could have 50, 60 grand in equity in the apartment complex that she lives in. She could send her kid to college, right? We could elevate a lot of the blue collar part of society in America and give them that savings account they don't have that you and I do by owning our homes, right? And a lot of America keeps their equity in their home. But what if that blue collar tenant could keep the equity in the 200-unit apartment complex she lives in? And I'll give you one further. She'd never have to move because she's got ownership. So she doesn't have to have the American dream of owning a house anymore because she could own where she lives, right? That's number one or number two. And number three, she's going to then, if you give her that sense of ownership, like, hey, this is yours too now, she's not going to tolerate the knucklehead, drug dealer living next door, or the person leaving litter on her front stoop, or the whatever it is. She's going to feel a sense of ownership just as she would for her own home, right?
Absolutely. Pride of ownership.
How do you get it done? How does it happen? Because she's not accredited, right?
Well, I can think of a number of ways in which theoretically it could be done. You could have theoretically a fund that's set up, a portion of whatever the equity is that you're setting aside in the deal, and you could raise that money as long as you disclose to your incoming investors that you're going to be having a piece of the equity being owned by and raised probably post-closing, because you don't know who your tenants are until after you close. So theoretically, there can be some headroom that's saved for potential investors at a later date. And both of us have done things like the CF crowdfunding exemption, which is much more in line with what you're trying to talk about from the standpoint of allowing individuals at much smaller investment amounts to be able to invest in a vehicle that will actually take equity in another vehicle. That's perfect. The table is already set theoretically on the rent side because lots of tenants have the ability to prepay rents. Some apartment complexes actually take other money. So what we're really talking about is, instead of designating money that you theoretically would lodge as a prepayment of rent for a rainy day or for some unforeseen circumstance, now you're going to build a mechanism or a platform to potentially allow that individual to start earning money actually on the money that they're setting aside through appreciation, cash flow, all of those things. It's a very ambitious dream, hope. I think it's great for people to have pride and ownership.
If you think about what it does for the stability of the financial systems in our country, it gives that, like, and not to get preachy about the haves and have-nots or whatever it is, but it gives access to wealth building to all, right? They can go out and read a book. They can go out and read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, just like you and I did, or whatever it is, and they can get exposure to these kinds of things. But the options are limited for those that say earn less than X amount of dollars per year or something like that, on what their wealth building tools are. They don't have the wherewithal or the access or whatever it is to go out and buy a home. Their ability to build long-term equity by just making a monthly payment is not going to be there. And with rates going way up, I think you're going to see home ownership plummet in this country over time. What if apartment buildings, living in a solid, safe residential community, was a way to build wealth too, right? Yeah. So you're saying Reg CF. I like it. I thought that Reg CF was limited. I thought it was like a 1-year window that you could do Reg CF.
There are certain limitations, obviously, with any type of structure. I would say that we're talking about as hypotheticals here for folks out there, but there are definitely ways and alternatives to be able to get people otherwise involved. So the regulators want this too. There's historically women, people of color, minorities, other groups that have been disenfranchised, that have not had access to invest in opportunities. I know Matt's heart. I know my heart. This should be for everybody. It's apolitical. Absolutely. This is not just for Republicans and Democrats or independents. It's for everybody. Experiencing and putting foundational principles in place to build generational wealth for you and for your family and for your family's future is a good thing for everybody. It doesn't have to just be the rich continue to get richer. It can be for everyone.
Yeah. And so I'm just trying to not like rob from the rich and give to the poor. I'm just trying to open up the door so that more people have access to do what we do. Up until recently, I wasn't able to talk to even like have open conversations like this with you without talking to only accredited investors, right? Yeah. The rules have changed a bit. There's 506B now, and there's Reg CF. There's a lot of ways you could do it.
There's a lot of ways. And listen, we understand the policy behind it is the richer that you are, the more you're able to defend yourself from some sort of shady or unscrupulous operator out there. But the reality is it can swing so far over that you're excluding a large portion of the population from even having the opportunity to even have a dialogue or a discussion. There always has to be a conversation of what the SEC calls suitability. Not every investment opportunity is suitable for every investor. And that's true for even accredited investors. There are opportunities out there that you have to be what we call a qualified purchaser, which means your net worth has to be 5 million or more. And there are other types of restrictions and opportunities out there. But what I think Matt is trying to share with everyone is the fact that there is a desire and a hope that things will change to make it more accessible to have conversations with people that have historically not had any opportunity to invest for their family or for their family's future.
Planting the flag now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm going to be the next the Jeff Bezos of real estate or the Uber of real estate investing or whatever, but these are true disruptors. If someone's able to figure out how to do in our space of real estate investing, you really change a lot of things. And so I hope the DeRosa group gets to be a part of it because it's what we're here to do. It is our mission. It's why I'm here on the earth to make a difference in others as it is for yours. And transforming lives through real estate is what we stand for as a company. And that includes the lives of our tenants, you know.
Absolutely.
So Dugan, that awesome conversation, man. I always enjoy chatting with you as always. If people want to pick your brain about their companies and talk to you about what they're up to, how do folks get a hold of you so that they can continue this conversation and have you help them build their brands as you helped me with mine?
That'd be awesome. We love serving people. So we really think that everyone that comes to us from the Lord. So the reality is we want to treat those relationships with care, nurture those relationships and serve you. And it may not be for us to be the person that gets you into the next chapter of your investment, but it might be us to get you to somebody that can help you. So if you want to learn more about us or me, thankfully my parents gave me a very unique name. You can Google Foo me. You can find me. We have brick and mortar locations in Dallas, Texas, and in California. Our practice is a national practice. And you can also drop me an email at info@Kelley, K-E-L-L-E-Y, Clark, CLARKE.com. So we'd love to give you some free resources to help you on your educational journey and just to help you in your next chapter. So thanks, Matt.
Thank you, brother. Dugan, it's been phenomenal having you here. As always, I really enjoy our conversations. Thank you. God bless you as well.
Thank you, brother.
For everything that you do for our communities and that. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
See you, man.
Hey guys, Matt Faircloth here. Thank you for listening again to the Cash Flow Digest. I really appreciate you guys doing that. If you guys want to hear more about what DeRosa Group has to offer, go to DeRosa Group, DeRosa Group.com, DeRosaGroup.com online. You can hear about all the great things that we offer from an educational standpoint and passive investment standpoint on our website. See you there. And if you guys want to join our online community, DeRosa Insiders on Facebook, where you can watch this program get recorded every Friday at noon Eastern, and you can come on as even a guest or ask questions on the show. We hope to see you guys on our online community, DeRosa Insiders. See you there.